Let's talk about a big election issue here in the UK. And Andy Mayer is here and is an energy analyst at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio, Andy. Great to see you.
Hi, Peter.
Big policy from Labour. They've launched Great British Energy. Keir Starmer, we saw him a little bit earlier on. He is in Scotland at the moment, the west of Scotland. And Labour said their Great British Energy project company would be headquartered in Scotland, invest in community wind and solar projects, as well as new technologies like floating offshore wind, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. The company is the flagship of their green energy pledge, and they want 100% renewable energy by 2030. Andy, what do you make of this plan?
Well, it's been long flagged, but there's still no concrete detail as to what this company is actually going to do and how it's going to be funded. So originally Labour said that they would use the windfall taxes on the North Sea to fund the proposal, and those revenues have fallen substantially since Labour flagged that they were going to stop new drilling. So they're already starting the project with a massive deficit that they'll have to find from somewhere else. They then said that they would look at this thing being either an investor, which Keir Starmer's affirmed this morning, which basically means they want to crowd in lots of private investment into net zero projects by using a flag-carrying state company to do that. But they also hinted they might want the company to be involved in actual delivery. So that could be, for example, the local projects at local levels. And they've got to decide they can't do everything. And in the context of the entire UK energy industry, which is about £150 billion, this is a very small project. It's about
It's not that great.
No. So the ambition is there that it might do some good, but it's not clear how it's going to do it. Mm-hmm. And they're more likely to end up encouraging people to invest in things that nobody else will touch with a barge pole. And if they do that, what we'll end up with is a lot of small white elephant projects, ones which will then need to be bailed out in future, and a bigger liability for the public purse, which will either be on your taxes or your bills.
What about Scotland in general? Because Scotland, of course, is a big electoral battleground for Labour. It is very, very important to them. They could go from a very small number of seats to a very large number of seats if the polls are to be believed. There are something like 100,000 people who work in oil and gas industry in Scotland. Now I've spoken to Labour politicians about this, I've been asking them about this, and they say they want to kind of phase things. They don't want to do it immediately. They say people shouldn't worry about their jobs. They want them to move from oil and gas into renewables, and they want to use skill sets to move into those. I mean, what is your take on that kind of gradual nature of the plan and the fact that there aren't going to be, under a Labour government, new oil and gas licences, but they will, they say, fulfil the ones that have been granted already?
Yeah, so this is mostly concentrated around the Aberdeen area, and both parties have signalled to industry that they don't care about their future, at least as it concerns oil and gas. Both, to be fair, have said they want a transition plan. And
I'm sure Labour would deny that, Andy.
I'm sure they would. But the oil and gas industry disagrees. And this is a £20 billion industry that the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have increased taxes on. So we're now up at levels similar to Norway, and the only difference between the two is 75% versus 78%. These are not serious tax levels if you want to encourage investment. These are encouragements for importing oil and gas from other locations to supplement what we're actually going to need in the decades ahead. So no, neither party have got this right, and nobody in Scotland should be reassured that the oil and gas industry is safe in either of their hands.
Top pollster Joe Twyman is in the studio with me, founder of Delta Poll. Joe, do people vote on this policy of Great British Energy, on renewables? Will they care about a £2 billion funding hole? Will this go over many people's heads? What do you think?
Well, the environment and climate change is very much a third tier issue in terms of importance. We were talking earlier about it's not up there with things like the cost of living in the NHS. But of course, Labour will spin this as presenting it to be intuitively linked to the cost of living and good for both the environment and for people longer term. But I imagine the detail will be broadly something that people don't pay too much attention to because of the obvious complexity. And so it will probably, I imagine, be used more to send vibes, as the young people would say, than actually win specific people over.
And energy, climate change, renewal, we were talking about low emission zones earlier and so on. I mean, that's something you at the Institute of Economic Affairs keep a very, very close eye on, obviously. When the manifestos come out, what do you expect the additional detail will be? Because as you said earlier, Andy, we just don't have a great level of detail here. Does it matter what that detail is?
You don't usually get the detail in the manifestos. The detail will come in white papers,
yes,
whoever forms
sure,
the government.
but more detail, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, maybe not. I mean, Labour have pitched this as a nationalisation plan. So they're trying to tap into that vein of the voters that tend to believe that nationalisation means things get cheaper, which is obviously untrue and not the experience of the energy industry in this country, but it's a popular myth. So that's all they need to do during an election campaign when nobody's focusing on the detail. But when the detail comes, what we will end up with is something that's quite likely to increase costs by investing in things that nobody else will touch.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. Andy Mayer there, who's an energy analyst at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Thank you